Good morning, everybody. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Bible. It is wonderful to see you. Again, slightly groggy this morning, but we'll get through it. We are in Luke chapter 12. Once again, Luke chapter 12. Let's start that again. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Bible. I am once again a little bit groggy, but it is nevertheless wonderful to have you. We are back once again in Luke chapter 12. We're going from verse 13, where Jesus is telling a parable of a rich fool. So let's just jump straight into it. Jesus says, someone in the crowd says to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Jesus said, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" We'll pause there for a second. We'll do the next bit. And he said to him, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." So, a guy comes up to him in the crowd. Jesus just calls him man. It is not man as in like, oh man, it's man as in you are a man, and I'm addressing you as such. And the man says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And so this could seem like a reasonable thing to ask if he is owed some inheritance, or it could seem like an unreasonable thing to ask if the inheritance is actually owed to his brother and he's just being greedy. We don't know the context from this guy's request, but Jesus seems to know the context because he warns him against covetousness. For those of you who don't know, covetousness is basically where you try and hoard all of your possessions, where you try to get really rich and collect nice, shiny, good things. And when someone else has something that you want, you sort of covet that. You're very jealous of that and you want it for yourself. So because Jesus is warning him against this, we kind of get the impression that this guy is probably being a bit greedy by asking for some of his brother's inheritance. It seems like maybe he isn't actually owed it, or maybe he's trying to take more than he is owed. But before Jesus warns him against that, Jesus says, "Who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" So initially this sort of stuck out to me because I was like, wait, is this Jesus saying this bit? Because surely Jesus is like judge and arbitrator over us. But Jesus is being very clear here with what his purpose is while he's on earth. He hasn't come to earth to settle petty disputes about inheritance and about, like the day-to-day, legal goings-on of people's lives, basically. Like, he's not here to settle sort of petty squabbles and things like that. Jesus is here to teach people, he's here to heal people, bring people to his kingdom, but most importantly, he's here to die for everyone. And in doing so allow us to go to heaven, and then God the Father will do the judging at a later point. So Jesus is saying, look, this isn't my job to get involved in this, but I'm going to teach you about what your heart should be in matters like this. And then he gives a parable. So let's have a look at the parable of what Jesus is saying. And he told them a parable saying, this is from verse 16, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God." So, again, we've got another bit where a guy addresses his soul as soul. He's like, "Hey soul, what's going on?" Just like Jesus addresses this man as man. It's quite a fun way of talking. I might start doing that. I think it might just be a translation thing. But it says, so we have a rich fool here, basically. So this is a man whose land produced plentifully, and so he had all this extra crop, all this stuff that he wasn't going to do with. He was a farmer, he owned a lot of land, his land produced tons of stuff, and he was looking at all of it and going, man, this is more than I need. This won't even fit in my barns. So what should I do with all this extra that won't even fit in the barns that I have prepared? Well, he decides to tear down his barns and build new ones and put even more crop into these barns. And from a worldly perspective, even today, 2,000 years later, even today we would look at this and go like, oh yeah, that's what the world tells us to do. If you're rich, put it in another bank account, start investing in this, give to the poor to a degree, but, you're rich, you've earned it, so be rich, do with your money what you want. It's your money, you've earned it, that's how capitalism works. And he said to his soul, he turns to his soul, and he goes, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. He's like, hey soul, hey thing inside of me, we're provided for years and years and years. We don't have to work, we don't have to do anything. So tell you what we'll do, we'll relax, we'll eat, we'll drink, and we'll be merry. This is another thing that's sort of going around society at the moment. It's maybe less of a prevalent thing, because we like being so busy. We're sort of too far on the other side of the spectrum sometimes. But there's a thing called, what's it called? Is it the FIRE initiative, like the FIRE plan or something like that, where you invest wisely and you retire early, basically. Financially invest, retire early. So the plan is you be really strategic with your money so that you can retire at 30 something, and then just for the rest of your life you can just do whatever you want. You can just relax, eat, drink, be merry. And so that's kind of what this guy's done. He's like, look, I've got all this stuff that I don't need, may as well just sort of do nothing now for the rest of my life. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So what does that mean, your soul will be required of you? Well, it's essentially God saying, look, I'm taking your soul. You're gonna die tonight. This is your day. This is your last day, and your soul is going to be with me. And so all of that grain that's in those barns, who does that belong to now? Where's that going? What's happening with that? What was the point of collecting all of that for yourself? Because it's not for you anymore. It's essentially warning us about how quickly life can change sometimes. We've had that in this sort of pandemic. It's look, your situation can just change on the drop of a hat. So what's the point in preparing for years and years ahead and having all these plans and all these ideas? Because God's going to step in and God's going to require something different of you. The Bible tells us this quite a lot. People like to make plans, like to think they've got things going their own way, and then God steps in and says, no, you're going here, no, you're doing this. And he does this with this rich man in the story. And the final verse of the story is, so the one who lays up treasure for himself so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. So this is the kind of person who just spends their whole life preparing for themselves, providing for themselves, storing up all this wealth, but is not rich towards God. It isn't following what God's telling them to do. Because, look, don't get me wrong, there are times where God calls us to relax. There are times where God calls us to eat, drink and be merry. There are times where God calls us to celebrate, to be happy, like weddings, for example, or Sundays, or when someone comes to faith. There are loads of times where, as Christians, we celebrate Christmas, Easter, all the rest of it, birthdays. God isn't saying don't celebrate these things, don't have a good time. I threw birthdays in there as if it's with Christmas and Easter. That's not a thing. But you know what I mean. God isn't banning birthdays, is what I'm saying. He's not banning us from celebrating and having fun. What he is banning us from doing is saying, oh, I'm just going to work super hard, get as much money as I possibly can, just store it up in my bank account, and then just not do anything for the rest of my life, and only celebrate, only eat, drink, and be merry. God's like, no, I've called you to more than just that. I've called you to more than just a life of just pleasing yourself and, lazing around on the sofa. I've called you to much more than that. God's called us to work. But there is sort of the caveat on the other side of don't work yourself into the ground and never spend time with God and never celebrate and relax, because that's also wrong. There's a middle ground. God gives us a very clear model of it in the Bible, where we have the Sabbath day, we have a day of rest, and we have days of work. and we work the land, and there's loads of stuff Bible teaching us, and that's for another time. What this story is essentially saying is, look, don't work so that you can relax. Work so you're working for God. Make sure that everything you do is to better God's kingdom and to build God's kingdom. And don't be afraid of relaxing, but don't make that your focus. Don't make that your goal in life, because as soon as you do, you'll fall. As soon as you do, you'll have issues. And if all of your wealth, all of your value is stored up in your bank account, is stored up in your massive barn or whatever it is, then that can be gone in a second. And that won't go with you when you die. And when you die, you're going to eternity. So you'll be pretty annoyed at yourself for wasting just a few decades storing up all that stuff in the barn when you could have been building towards a good eternity with God. So that's where we'll end it today. Good little passage, and it leads beautifully into the next passage, which leads beautifully into the passage after that as well. Like chapter 12 already gets this good flow, sort of going through it for these next bits. So I'm excited for the videos that we've got coming up. But for now, I will see you later. I hope you all have wonderful days, and I will see you all tomorrow. Much love.